Hey guys, welcome to my AQ40 Nature Resistance Prep Guide. Today we are going to be covering the following topics. Do we need nature resistance? Boss abilities that will be mitigated by nature resistance? Consumables to help with these bosses? How much nature resistance to aim for? Gear? And a few closing words. So, let's get ready for AQ. Do we need it? Princess Huhuran and Viscidus are the two bosses in AQ40 that bring a nature resistance gear set to mind. They deal heavy AoE damage in these fights, but some can be resisted. Tanks. My advice as a tank is that you won't need a nature resistance set. Mitigation gear on Huhuran and a mixed threat and mitigation gear on Viscidus will perform far better than a nature resistance set. However, we don't know what's around the corner and how these abilities will be tuned, so I am building a nature resistance gear set that might be useful if things are completely different, but I don't think they will be based off what real classic was like and also what private servers were like. Warrior DPS. The most commonly used tactic on Princess Huhuran is to get 15 or slightly more melee DPS and hunters to run a full nature resistance set. This is because at periods throughout the fight, Huhuran will do a poison bolt volley that hits 15 players. Having this many players in nature resistance soaks up that damage and it allows everyone else to blast without too much damage going out to the raid. This being said, I have absolutely no doubt that the top 10% of guilds will more than likely be able to completely ignore nature resistance and just blast her down regardless. Tanks not running any nature resistance gear means they have a higher threat ceiling, it means the DPS can go harder, and it's a bit like what we saw in BWL. In the old days, BWL strategies used to be a lot slower, bosses used to die more slowly, but with the introduction of Fury Prot, way more threat goes out on the tank, and it means the DPS can just pop off completely and make the fight so quick compared to what they used to be. But this is a strategy I think guilds will grow into, it's not something that's going to happen straight away, so nature resistance at the start of AQ is more than likely going to be necessary on this fight for the melees to soak those bolts and just clean everything up. AQ is going to be a lot of fun. I really hope it's difficult and I really hope we have to work hard for that first clear and we don't go in and stomp it. Boss abilities. Princess Huhuran. Poison bolt volley is one of the main nature threats here. It hits roughly 2000 damage and this ability occurs whenever Huhuran frenzies or when she is below 30% health and goes into that final berserk. This ability hits the 15 closest players to the boss, which ideally will be your nature resistance soakers. When she goes into berserk at 30% health, her poison bolt volley is going to have a 4-second cooldown. This could be straight up 10k damage to 15 players within 20 seconds of play. Nature protection potions are going to be massive here along with nature resistance gear. The faster you can get through the 30% phase of the fight, the easier the boss is going to be for you. Your guild should be coordinating big cooldowns here like Death Wish, Recklessness, Arcane Power on the mages, Adrenaline Rush on the rogues, Rapid Fire on the hunters if there are any left at range, just to get through this phase as fast as possible. Viscidus. There is a lot of nature damage in this fight, but his Poison Volley is the only resistible ability here. His Toxin Clouds he leaves on the ground are not resistible. His Poison Volley will hit everyone in the raid every 10 seconds for roughly 1500 damage. This is quite healable to be honest. The volley leaves behind a damage over time effect which does a lot of damage. The healers having to debuff the whole raid and also having to heal that damage becomes slightly overwhelming, so something needs to be done about it. The best remedy for this problem is Elixir of Poison Resistance. These things are way overpowered. They have a 3-second cooldown which is independent of any potion, so it won't put your other battle potions on cooldown. So this will free up your healers and allow them to take care of that initial burst damage on the whole raid without having to worry about debuffing. So if your guild is deciding to cleanse their own poison through Elixir of Poison Resistance, it's quite likely that nature resistance gear is not going to be needed here, but could be nice. Important consumables. Greater Nature Protection Potion is going to be your main consumable for Huhuran and Viscidus. Pop one of these before the fight and then pop another one during the fight. This is going to double your health pool. Elixir of Poison Resistance. These will be king on Viscidus. They have a 3-second cooldown and don't share a cooldown with any other potion. This will take a lot of stress away from your healers. If your healers can handle the initial damage of the poison volleys and the raid are taking care of their own poison debuffs, then nature resistance gear will most likely not be necessary for his fight. Gearing as a DPS warrior in the 15-player soak group for Huhuran. Aim for around 160 nature resistance unbuffed, and maintain as many key DPS stats as possible, like your hit cap and crit. Make sure in your group on this fight there is a hunter using Aspect of the Wild to buff you with extra nature resistance. As a tank for this fight, I won't be going for a nature resistance set. I am going for a mixed mitigation set that maintains my hit cap. T1 and T2 pieces with high stamina and armor, Drake Talon pauldrons, and the Helm of Endless Rage will all be making an appearance in my gear set here. If you are unsure how to gear as a tank, please check out my Fury Prot tanking guide as we go into a lot more depth here on what you need to look for. The link will be just below. For DPS warriors, here is a Wowhead Gear Planner set I have created for nature resistance. I have used items that I think are fair and haven't included items like the Drake Fan Talisman, which would be really nice in this set, but very few people have it and it's hard to obtain. Obviously, if you have any of these really high tier items, use them to your advantage and put them in this set. This gear set is a baseline for you to adapt around what DPS items you have available. Make sure you're at least 305 weapon skill, maintain your hit cap, aim for around 160 nature resistance, and then go for crit and strength, and you can't go wrong. You will also find a link for the gear planner down below and you can alter it as needed. In this gear planner we've used Gnome as an example because they don't get a weapon skill as a racial, so we're using the Edgemaster's handguards to supplement that. Lionheart Helm is a very high value piece and helps us maintain our hit cap. Onyxia Tooth Pendant helps us maintain hit cap, and we can't get a lot of nature resistance in this slot anyway unless we get really lucky with an RNG item. Acid Etched Pauldrons drop from the Rubin Khan in Strathholm Undead and offer a nice amount of nature resistance. Gaia's Embrace is a tailoring item, and this comes out with the release of Anchorage. Get the mats ready and then get it crafted before you go to AQ. If you aren't getting this, then the Cloak of Cenarius from Maraudon is another really good option. Sandstalker Breastplate is also an item released with Anchorage. It's a leatherworking one, so get the mats ready and get that crafted as soon as possible. If you don't want to go for this one, then Chimeric Breastplate, another leatherworking one, is a nice option with slightly less resistance. Battleborn Bracers give us a little bit of crit and also put us towards that hit cap. Edgemaster's Handguards for the weapon skill, which gives us 3% hit chance. If you aren't using the Edgemaster's Handguards because you can get the weapon skill from somewhere else, or simply because you can't afford these, then here are a few other options you can use with nature resistance. The Sandstalker Gauntlets are another crafted pair that don't offer any offensive stats but have a nice resistance, and these will be available in Phase 5. The Arachnid Gauntlets are a very interesting pair, and they drop from Tutankhash in Razorfen Downs. The best roll you could get on these for a warrior would be of the Tiger, giving you potentially 10 agility and 10 strength, which would be half a crit and 20 attack power. Striker's Mark in our ranged weapon position is giving us a hit chance because we need it right now. If you don't have Striker's Mark, that's fine, use something like the Satyr's Bow. Chloromesh Girdle gives us a lot of nature resistance. This drops from Razorlash in Maraudon. Cenarian Reservist Legards are a really nice item that have huge amount of resistance. This comes from doing the quest Armaments of War in Silithus. It is available to do right now, and it is a 20 raid quest where you have to kill a difficult boss. I would suggest getting this one done and out the way because it could be annoying if there aren't a lot of groups going on later on. Fang Drip Runners are a nice nature resistance piece. They drop off Narub and Khan in Strathholm Undead. We are using one RNG nature resistance green ring here. It doesn't have to be a 20. Get the highest you can afford. We're using it because we have our hit cap now with the other ring, so extra resistance is going to help. Don Julio's band in the other ring socket gives us crit, attack power and hit, and we're at hit cap now. We have 2 Heart of Noxians which drop from Noxian in Maraudon in our trinket slots here. They don't offer a lot of resistance, they only have 10 each, and the on-use isn't very effective for the Huhuran fight anyway, so these could definitely be swapped out for a more damage focused stat if you can get the nature resistance for somewhere else if your gear allows that within the hit calculations. So the trinkets have a lot of room to play with there. You could even try running with Hand of Justice and Black Hand's Breath in those trinket slots and keep the rest of the gear set the same and just run 20 less nature resistance. You'd probably be okay, especially with the Hunter buff buffing you as well for extra nature resistance. Working in a diamond flask here instead of one of the hearts could actually be really valuable as well, because it's going to help your raid burst the boss down in that 30% window. That's going to conclude the gearing part of this. If you have MVP items like the Onslaught Belt or the Drakefang Talisman, don't let them sit and rot in your bags, get them into the gear set and just readjust things so you can get the nature resistance and get your hit cap as well. It's really important. If you have any questions about the gearing at all or want any advice on what you should use, feel free to drop in the stream at any time and we can talk about what pieces of gear you have and we can kind of work out together what the best situation for you is going to be. That's going to wrap up our AQ Nature Resistance Guide for Warriors. I'm really looking forward to Anchorage and I hope it's going to be difficult. I don't recommend tanks running nature resistance. I think it's going to be way more beneficial to run effective HP mixed in with some threat stats. This means your DPS can do way more damage and the bosses are going to go down quicker. If I change my mind on this after running this content, I will of course make an updated tank gear guide for the nature resistance bosses. Be sure to jump into my stream at any time to talk about any of the topics we discussed today. Enjoy your preparation for what I hope to be an extremely enjoyable and difficult patch. So until next time, keep on blasting.